Cup fans, today we're going to be talking about all things Indianapolis Colts defense on episode 21, aka the Bob Sanders episode, my childhood hero. Love that guy. Shout out Bob Sanders.
Go.
I am one of your hosts, Pro Fan Logan, joined by your other co-host, Ati Oberoy. What's going
What
on,
up,
man? You
baby?
ready to talk some defense? It's defensive
Boy,
side of the ball today for the Colts.
boy, am I excited for the next 25 minutes to shred this defense. I'm so fucking pumped for this.
We're gonna shred this defense, the Colts defense, just like so many mid-tier quarterbacks shredded this Colts defense in the 2024 season, unfortunately. But before we get to that, we did want to briefly highlight the replacement potentially for Gus Bradley. The Colts have named a couple candidates that are kind of on the docket, either scheduled for interviews or to be determined when they're going to schedule interviews. But right now it's looking like Lou Anarumo is first and foremost. He was obviously the Bengals defensive coordinator most recently. Wink Martindale, who is the current defensive coordinator for Michigan, actually, the Michigan Wolverines. He's
Mhm.
been around the league for a long time though, so he's been on a lot of teams, most recently in the NFL with the Giants. You
Colts
got
actually
Dennis.
interviewed him for our head coaching job back when we ended up hiring Steichen. We actually took Wing through about 2 or 3 interviews. So,
I saw that. Yeah, yeah. And hopefully he doesn't hold that against the Colts if he does interview again. It's
if
like,
he's
hey, you
taking an
guys had me
interview,
in here for a head coaching gig a couple years ago.
yeah,
What's up with that?
if he's taking
But
an interview, he's a hard-headed guy and he's ready to move on, I
yeah,
think.
agreed. And then number three, you're looking at Dennis Allen, who, of course, most recently was the head coach for the New Orleans Saints. Before that, he was the defensive coordinator over there in New Orleans. Steve Wilkes is another name on the docket. And then kind of an unknown as far as household names go. Ephraim Banda, I believe is, if I'm saying that correctly. He is
Mhm.
the DB coach
For the
for the
Browns.
Cleveland Browns most recently. So
Yep.
that's your list of candidates so far. Before we dive into a full review of the 2024 Colts, Addy, what are your thoughts on those candidates so far, and who are you kind of leaning towards
Yeah,
as of right now?
I like the variety. I like that they're interviewing a bunch of different people. I guess the two biggest defensive coordinators that stand out to me that I would want. Number one would be Dennis Allen, like what he did when he was DC for the Saints. That was a top 10 defense, has some pretty cool blitz packages, things of that nature, and he'll hopefully get the right personnel and players in place to be able to run this type of defense that he does. And then secondly, I'd say Lou. Lou, guys, you got to give him a chance. Like this guy is a strong defensive minded coach. He looked the reason the Bengals defense did not look good this season was not because of Lou. It's because they decided to pay, you know, Joe Burrow and put all this money on the offensive side of the ball, where they were just like, Lou, we're gonna hand you a bunch of fucking bits and pieces on the defensive side of the ball and make fucking soup with it. And it's like you
They
can't
had they had
can't do that.
Hendrickson, and that's it, pretty much.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
on that
yeah,
side of the ball.
exactly. But in years
Yeah,
prior, like this defense was,
yeah.
it was a pretty good defense. So those are the two favorite. Wink, obviously would be up there in regards to 3-4. I actually put out a tweet. I'm not a huge like Wink guy. I don't really want Wink here. Wink's a guy that's gonna like blitz. This is probably exaggerating, but it almost feels like 85 to 90% of the time, and that's great. It's a completely different vibe than what we were getting from Gus Bradley, which is primary cover three defense. Rarely would ever blitz. But when he did blitz, it's kind of exciting, but still would rarely blitz. And this is just a complete opposite. I'm looking for someone that is going to blitz pretty frequently, but also kind of keep it to a minimum, because I don't think the corners we have right now, you can put them on an island on a consistent basis, 80, 90% of snaps. So that was my biggest concern. So unless they, you know, get some new guys in here, even though I do love our DB
Right.
room, we'll talk about that. But still, I would like a healthy blend, maybe like a 60-40 more on the blitz side, bringing new blitz packages. And I think Dennis Allen and Lou Anarumo would be those two for me.
Yeah, I'm similar in that. I think I would kind of put, if I had to give a number one, I would probably actually go with Wink. The only reason why I would go Wink first is because of, like you mentioned, it's almost like a culture shift, right? A culture change. And I think as we saw this season, what the Colts need more than anything is a complete overhaul when it comes to culture. And I think he's the type of guy that would provide that. And what I mean by that, I've heard him referred to as almost like a Bruce Arians type coach, but on the defensive side of the ball. So he's a little bit more rough and rugged, and he's passionate and fiery, and he'll yell at his players, or I get upset at
Hmm.
guys and hold them accountable. And I feel like more than anything right now, man, the defensive side of the ball, they need some serious accountability. So I think a guy like Wink Martindale, who has so much experience and has been around the block and has succeeded at a high level in the league, I like him as a coordinator. And then um, number two, I'd probably go Dennis Allen. And
Hmm.
then number three would probably be Lou Anarumo for me. I think Dennis Allen, as you mentioned, he was at such a high level when he was a defensive coordinator for the Saints. I think a lot of people criticize him, for his last few years there as a head coach in New Orleans, but man, you got to remember, guys, watching NFL football the past 5-10 years, that Saints defense has historically been a top 10 defense, as Addy said, and that was a that was a defense that would shut down some pretty impressive offenses as well. They had a couple times where, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers came into town and they blanked them. I mean, like
Yeah.
they were good. They were a really good defense.
Yeah.
So
One
yeah, I
thing
would
you'll
probably
notice
go
too,
on that order
Logan.
for me.
One thing you'll notice too on this list, and obviously I think there'll be more names to come throughout the next coming weeks, but no Robert Sala as of yet. I know a
Yeah,
lot of Colts fans wanted Robert Sala. He's actually getting some head coaching looks still, so because of what he did with the Jets defense. Like that Jets defense when he was up there was like a top five defense in every
yeah,
statistical category
yeah.
when
And this
healthy.
it'll change for sure. It's subject to change. This is just at time of recording. Obviously, I think there'll probably be a couple more names that are added to the list unless the Colts fall in love with a candidate, right? And they have an
Yeah,
interview and they're like, "Oh my god, like this is our guy."
yeah.
So we'll see. I will say one quick thing before we get into our defensive review for 2024. One quick thing I will say: it should be interesting what candidates even want to take the Colts defensive coordinator job, though, because it has to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because it could be a situation where a guy comes in and he's a lame duck. And what I mean by
Mm-hmm.
that is, hey, let's say Colts don't make the playoffs next year. Colts don't win the AFC South, right? And it's another Ballard disaster class. Chris Ballard is gone. Shane Steichen is gone. Maybe AR is gone as well.
Right.
It's a defensive coordinator that's going to basically
Be
be a
part of
lame
clean
duck. So
house.
he's going to be reporting to a brand new GM and a brand new regime.
Yeah.
Who knows? It should be really interesting to see who is willing to accept that job, knowing that they might not have the utmost job security after next year,
So yeah, and
regardless of how they do.
I totally agree, and I know we talked about this in a couple of episodes ago, but I was thinking too, and I 100% agree with you. Like that is, I 100% agree. Like they're gonna have to, if next season doesn't go how we want it to go, it's gonna clean house. That includes the DC because the new GM, new head coach are gonna bring in their own guys. Uh, One thing I want to say too, there's only 32 of these jobs in the
That's
league,
true.
in the
That's
world, right?
true.
There's only 32 of these jobs. They're getting paid millions of dollars. So for them to
Money's
miss out
money.
and
Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
for them to miss out an opportunity to, whether it be build your resume or make an impact or even just continue to coach at the end of the day and make millions of dollars, I have a hard time people are seeing any of these candidates specifically saying no. But the point still stands that they could be a lame duck. God forbid the season
Yeah.
doesn't go as expected. But if they hire the right guy,
Yeah.
that could be the
I heard
difference.
I heard something pretty interesting though, about Dennis Allen. I will say,
Mhm.
on the radio today, it almost makes too much sense for Aaron Glenn and for Dennis Allen just to swap jobs. Like so Aaron Glenn goes and he's the head coach of
Oh
the
yeah.
Saints, and then Dennis Allen goes and he's the defensive coordinator in Detroit. If I'm not mistaken, I believe there he had some ties to Dan Campbell, is what people were saying. So he
You'll
he
get some
was
continuity
he
there. You
was
know he's
once
not going to
in
get fired.
Dan Campbell's staff. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
job security is at its highest as long as I think when Dennis Allen's there, that defense is still going to be as good as Aaron Glenn's. It's just if Ben Johnson leaves, what does that offense look like? But
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Dan
you're right.
Campbell's going to keep those guys ready. They're going to be consistent Super Bowl contenders every season.
Listen, man, we got a good group of guys here. We're ready to go. All grit, one pride. But anyway, moving into the topic of the hour. 2024 Indianapolis Colts defense. You are now on the
On the
spotlight.
clock. On the
On the
clock.
clock, yes. Both of them, honestly, on the clock and in the
Yeah.
spotlight. First and foremost, give me a general overview from your perspective on how they performed. Give me a little bit of a grading, and maybe your MVPs and your
Yeah.
disappointments. We'll sort of just take it away from there.
Yeah, we'll just go right into it. And guys, remember, we started this conversation talking about DCs because Gus Bradley got fired and the defense was so bad because
Right.
of him, which
So
is
you
why
could probably
we're doing this.
imagine how this is gonna go.
Exactly. I'm gonna give this defense a D for defense because that's just like letter grade wise. Like this was just bad. This was a
Yeah.
bad defensive. They had multiple stretches of games where it was just bad. They started to kick things into gear. Like it felt like when they played good teams, they like kicked it into gear, and then the offense was struggling. But then when they played bad teams, like you can't be bad against bad teams. That's not what good defenses do. Like you struggle. I mean, good defense can still struggle. Good defenses can still struggle against great teams, like they did against the Lions. Even though 24 points may seem like a lot, that defense showed up against the Lions if you actually
Yeah.
watch the game tape. But still, too many piss poor games. Like Jacksonville, 34 points. The Tennessee Titans coming back after you're up like 38-10 or some shit like that. You talk about the New York Giants game. Even like games like that we barely won, the Patriots and the Jets game, the defense still like missed
Yes.
tackles galore. They led
Yes.
the league in missed tackles. And part of it you can say, hey, Gus Bradley in his scheme, he lets up too many, and he did. He let up way too many yards. It was a bend don't break defense.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, bend don't break means field goals. But unfortunately, it was still touchdowns because this team, Gus Bradley is at fault still, but still the players are. They could not tackle. They led the league in tackles, despite
Missed
having in missed tackles.
tackles, guys, not
Yes,
tackles.
yes,
Although
that is
Zaire
actually a very
Franklin
important
did
point.
lead the NFL in tackles, but hey,
Yes.
they had a lot of missed tackles in there too.
Hey, Zaire Franklin led the lead in tackles, but he also was fourth in regards to missed tackles in the NFL. On the defensive side of the ball,
Yes.
EJ
Yes.
Speed was like top 3 or something like that. Nick Cross, EJ, and Zaire, I think, were on that list of like top 10 tacklers or
Yes.
tacklers by the end of the season or something like that. Once again, coming back to go ahead.
Couple points I wanted to highlight real quick going off that because I know we gave everybody an overview last episode of some of the numbers right on the offensive side. So I pulled it up real quick. Total defense, the Colts were 29th as far as yards allowed, 29th in the NFL. Passing
That's
defense,
bad.
26th in the NFL. Rushing defense, 24th in the NFL.
I think that'd
Points
be worse.
allowed. So points allowed, scoring defense. Let's see, 24th as well. 24th in the NFL at 25.1 points a game.
Yeah.
Red zone defense, 23rd in the
Yeah.
NFL. Third down defense was horrid. 30th in the NFL. 44.4%. They gave up a
On third downs.
That's the point that I wanted to highlight really quick before getting into our MVPs and disappointments.
Yeah.
I swear, and I know you probably feel the same way, there were so many games that I was watching, Ati, where it was like 3rd and 17, 3rd and 18, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 19. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And the opposing team would throw a quick screen pass, 4 missed tackles later, first down. And it's just like, that's when you know that it's just not a good season, when you can't get off the field. I mean, there were just drives where you're like, yes, we have this team on 3rd and long. We just sacked them on 2nd down, or back-to-back run stuffs. Like, hell yeah, defense, let's go get off the field.
Yeah.
Let's get the offense back out there. That is one stat I will say that is eye-popping. To be 30th on 3rd down defense, you are not going to be a playoff team in the National Football League. You
No,
have to get off the field, bro. You gotta get your offense back on the field, and far too many times, like I said, 3rd and long was the Colts' Achilles heel. I swear on anything, they could stop 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3,
no, they
3rd and
couldn't even do
1,
that. I don't even think they could do that.
but as soon as it turned into 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11 or more, I swear they played the softest zone coverage I've ever seen and just allowed them to pick up a first down.
And
It
as
was
Colts
so
fans,
sad to
you're
see.
as Colts fans, you were kinda just used to it. I felt like,
Mhm.
you'll see a 3rd
Mhm.
and 10, 3rd and 11, you were like, there is, like, a realistic 50% chance that this is gonna be converted. 3rd 12,
I
3rd
mean
13, like.
44.4% on 3rd down were the Colts last year. So damn near, you're right. Almost 50% of the time when it was 3rd down, you were like, this is a 50-50 shot,
Yeah,
coin flip on
yeah.
if the Colts are going to get off the field or not. And that's like I said, it's just not going to get it done,
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
you're not gonna make the playoffs. We talked about the offensive side of the ball where they ranked last episode.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, you're like you mentioned, you're not gonna make the playoffs ranked in the bottom 20s as a defensive side. But that
No.
makes me question, like, imagine if we could even get this defense to a top 16 defense, a top half of the league, how many games could have flipped in that regard where, we could have finished the season 9-8 or 10-7 if the defense was even competent. Because you saw in the beginning, like that Packers game, if Josh Jacobs didn't run for 158 yards in a quarter and a half, like what could have happened? They didn't even have fucking Jordan Love.
Yeah.
So, it's just these little things like how, and that's why, I'm excited for these defensive coordinators. Like bring in the right guy. I'm not asking you to bring in to make this defense a top 10 defense. I'm just asking you to make it a top half of the league because hopefully the offense takes the next step in year 3 with Anthony Richardson, these weapons. He has a full offseason, Shane Steichen. So it's just find a way to get in the top half. I think games can sway. Games can go a little bit differently. I wanted to ask you, let's just kind of break it down real quick. Let's start with the negatives. Biggest disappointment of the season on the defensive side of the ball. You can either go player, you can go
Mm.
as like a group, whatever
As a
you
group, yeah.
whatever you want to say. So I guess what are your thoughts there?
I would go biggest disappointment as far as someone that I felt like took a backward step, and I don't think will be back with the team next year. Is going to be Julian Blackman for me. In a day, and now I will say this: we found out post postseason or post at the end of the year, we found out that he was dealing with an injury since very early on in the season, and he played through it. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't enough, quality safety play on that back end. And I would say of all the years that he's been here, as far as when he's been healthy, it was definitely a down year for Julian Blackman. He
Was
wasn't
it
great in
torn
coverage.
labrum or what was it?
Yeah, it was like a shoulder injury or like upper. I know it was like upper, yeah, shoulder
Yeah.
area. Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, it's just disappointing because in years past he'd been a decent cover guy, right? And he'd been a guy that can come up and make a tackle. He'd be there for a big play normally and make a big interception here and there and be flying all over the field. And he just wasn't there. It seemed like he had lost a step, and I don't know if that was due to injury or not. But at the end of the day, he was definitely a big disappointment for me. Thankfully, we'll get into it probably later on our MVPs, but Nick Cross stepped up right on the other side. But yeah, as far
Yeah.
as disappointments for me, I would probably target there. Yeah,
I'd
that
say
would be mine. Yeah.
I'd
What
say
about you?
especially as a tackler too, Julian Blackman kind of took a step back. Now, I was viewing this
Yeah.
as this entire season. I was like, we're not going to re-sign Julian. It doesn't make sense to re-sign Julian because of his play. After it came out that like he had a torn shoulder or labrum, whatever the heck his injury was, like I gave a little bit of leeway. I think because it was similar to. I mean, it's not a fractured back like Michael Pittman, but when you come to hear stuff like that and playing through it, like obviously like that's a big injury. It's not something that you can just easily gloss over. Now,
Right.
Julian Blackman didn't get the bag this offseason. He came back on a 1-year deal. So I think if the Colts can find a way to just get him back on a 1-year deal, I'm fine with him in regards to as like a bridge safety or as like a backup safety. to whoever we draft or bring in free agency if the money works, if you're not overpaying for him. Because based on this season, I don't think a lot of teams are going to be like, give him a hefty guaranteed 3-year contract based upon how this
It's
season
gonna be
went.
tough. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. So if we can just like figure out the market, maybe come a little bit low market price and say, hey, we'll bring you back on another 1 year deal, come prove your
Mm.
worth again because you'll be fully healthy and we can use you either as a bridge guy or you come back to where we expected you to be, how you were last season. That was like his best season last season. So somehow if he can find his way back to that, that'd be great. But still having him, I think, is an efficient backup over guys like Rodney Thomas. It would be fine. But I also like, what's that guy's name? Scott. What the heck's his name? He keeps getting injured in training camp. He's a safety we drafted
Mm.
2 years ago. I feel like it was something Scott. I just forgot what his first name was. I want to see him healthy because that'd be great too. He'd be a great addition. Going on his third year, Colts fan, so we haven't seen him play. So maybe he could take that step. Um, Enough Julian Blackman talk. I feel like the guy that I feel like we need to move on from and just kind of underwhelmed this season. I want to say linebacker core as a whole, but specifically EJ Speed. Get him the hell off our team. If he was Mr. Anonymous,
I knew it.
uh,
I knew you were gonna say
yeah.
that, and that would honestly be up there as one of mine too. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah. If he was that Mr. Anonymous guy that wrote in the fucking Athletic or ESPN, whatever, you are right, Ballard. Call him chicken shit because that's exactly what he is. This guy was just an absolute liability in regards to pass coverage and just like filling the gaps. You could see on film on the all 22s, like this guy was not hitting the right gaps. People were passing the ball to whoever he was covering in the middle of the field because they knew that the linebacker core as a whole was really bad in pass coverage, but
Yeah.
specifically EJ Speed was not good. Did he have his moments? Absolutely. He's a great run stopper in regards to like 4th and 1s. You know EJ Speed's going to find a way to stop him in the backfield as he
Right.
does. It's kind of like how we know Colts are going to give up 3rd and 11s, but EJ Speed's going to stop 4th and 1s, it feels like, every single time. So going to miss that, but like should not have let Bobby Okereke walk. Him and Zaire would have been great. If Shaq was still here, that would have been phenomenal. But it's time for EJ Speed to go. Time to give Jalen Carlisle some of his or most of his reps because Jalen was great. Obviously, you have to keep Zaire. It's kind of a hit or miss. He is a captain. I do want to see him take the next step since he did get paid and just be a good leader that he wants to be. But overall, the entire linebacker core to me was a disappointment. Congrats. You were highest in tackles, but you also led the league in missed tackles, and you were also a liability in pass coverage in the middle of the field. So, EJ Speed, get the hell out of here. I could care less. You also did Scotty Colt wrong. We saw the whole Twitter interaction. We talked about it a couple episodes. So it's just these little things just add up, and I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Colts fans are just over it. If he has to be the
Yeah.
scapegoat, he has to be the scapegoat. But I guess play matters at that point too.
And I know it's hard. I know it's difficult to sort of look at the bright side, but flipping the other side of the coin, were there bright spots? And who are those bright spots for you, either like you said, either positional wise or individual
Yeah.
um for you?
I'll do kind of a core and then I'll do a person. So like core wise, everyone said the defensive line underwhelmed this season. I disagree. I think the defensive line actually played pretty well. The problem was that the pass coverage, like they couldn't the corn or the linebackers and stuff, they didn't give the defensive line enough time, honestly, to kind of get to the ball. I think everyone that played against a Gus Bradley defense or was prepping for a Gus Bradley defense knew that, hey, we just got to get the ball out quick because this team's a liability in pass coverage, especially in the middle of the field. It didn't help. Buckner was gone for a couple of games, 4 or 5 games, but still, when
Yeah.
Buckner was back, he was a menace. Him paired with Grover Stewart, they were menaces. And then in the minimal snaps that Latu played, like he was a demon. Like it's. I know it's hard for Colts fans to hear that he was a demon based on his stats, but he led the Colts in regards to pressure, led the rookies, I think, in regards to pressure and forced fumbles, and he only played half the snaps as Jared Verse and every
Mm.
other Colts player on the defensive line of the ball. So I think what we saw out of him and what can be, you saw those flashes. Now give him 100% of the reps. Quiddy was a little bit of a disappointment, but I think as a defensive line as a whole, like that was exciting. And I think the defensive MVP we might have a similar take on. Loved the second year out of Jalen Jones this season. Really took
Woo!
woo, our boy. He really
This is
took
a
a
Jalen Jones podcast.
yeah. Jalen Jones is like my 4th time asking. If you see this, you're more than welcome to hop on and talk with us. We'd love it. Um, but man, he did a phenomenal job. I know he had a couple of rough games to start the season. Once again, 7th round pick, right? So he's got to develop, and usually 7th rounders don't even make it in the league. So the fact that he was a starting
Wow.
ball hawk kind of corner, kind of DB, it was great to see. And I think also the other DBs kind of stepped up in Juju Brent's absence. Like Kenny Moore still played Kenny Moore ball. Samuel Womack, I think that you somewhat saved Ballard to go into this ninth season because we like our guys. Kind of made sense on the defensive backs. As much as I hate Ballard, it kind of made sense because
Yeah,
Womack, Kenny Moore, and Jalen
yeah.
Jones stepped up.
It was more of a scheme problem, I think. I agree. I think
Yeah.
I think those defensive backs are a good building block. You definitely need some help on the safety end of things, but yeah, I think Gus Bradley's scheme put them in bad positions this year, and
Yeah.
he even talked about that. But yeah, no, I hate to have the same one as you, but I got to go Jalen Jones as well. We've given him shout out after shout out. We've had episodes where we talked about him. There was a time where he was the highest ranked Colts defender on PFF as well this
Yep.
year. And you got to look at growth too, right? Like growth is a big deal in the NFL and coming into your own. And he struggled quite a bit in those first few games and then started growing and really became probably the Colts all around most solid, productive corner. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, and that's saying something when you guys got guys like Kenny Moore, and you got a guy like Juju Brents who you drafted very highly. So really cool to see a seventh rounder hopefully carve out and etch out a spot on this team. And if he keeps playing and keeps growing like he did this past season, I have no doubt that there's a Pro Bowl written in his future because he played a hell of a year last year, and I think he'll just continue to get better, man, if he keeps
Yeah.
that dog mentality.
I think
So
completely underrated. And I do think also for next season, getting Samson Ebukam back will help, and hopefully Juju Brents can stay healthy. That'll help as like a corner two, corner three. I don't think he's a corner one anymore. Jalen Jones takes that spot, baby, and go draft someone. But if Juju can stay healthy, it's a decent, corner two as long as he's available.
yeah. Well, that's all we got for today, guys, as far as the defensive review for the Colts. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Follow us on all of our socials. TikTok, Twitter, or X, Instagram. Even though TikTok's going probably bye bye, definitely
Hmm.
hit us a follow on there, anyways. And I know moving forward here, we will probably have a little bit of a different schedule as far as episode posting wise in the off season. But again, we're going to be pretty consistently putting up content, probably at least weekly, I would say, for the
Hmm.
foreseeable future. But yeah, appreciate all the love and the support. And hopefully the Colts defense can get a little bit better of a letter grade than D next year.
Yep, and nail that DC hire. I hope so.
Yes.